All right, good afternoon and welcome to Drush for Humans. My name is Jon Peck and I'm a Zen certified PHP engineer with about a decade and a half of web application development experience. I've been working with Drupal for about 4 or 5 years. I'm the owner of FluxSauce, which is a development and consulting shop in upstate New York, specializing in Drupal. I'm also the author of 5 lynda.com courses, including Simplified Drupal Sites with Drush. If you're interested in watching that course later, or any other for that matter, I've got a stack of free 7-day trial cards, which a bunch of you have gotten. I can get them to you after the session. In this session, we're going to be looking at Drush, the command line utility for managing Drupal sites. I'm going to start by describing what Drush is and why it can be helpful, then show you how to install it, including a few gotchas. I'll demonstrate how to install a website in seconds, then how to manage modules, users, and a lot more. Finally, I'll show you how to quickly archive and restore a site. Drush for Humans was designed with people with a basic Drupal administration experience. If you've ever installed a site and modules, then you should be set. If not, you're going to see a lot of things from the ground up, which is honestly the way I like to learn. Finally, you should be willing to type a couple commands, as Drush is not a graphical user interface. Don't worry, nobody's going to be earning like their propeller head awards today. I'm going to be demonstrating using an Ubuntu 12.04 server running on VirtualBox to simulate a real-world environment. I've set it up only with an AMP stack, which consists of Apache web server, MySQL database, and PHP for the language. This is also, not so coincidentally, fulfills the requirements of Drupal. If you want to be able to access Drush, you're going to need command line access to wherever your site is installed. This can be local using a terminal, or if the site is hosted remotely, you're going to need an SSH client. If you're using a Mac or Linux, it's already installed, you're already set. If you're using Windows, I recommend using PuTTY, which is a great free client. Finally, I'm going to be going over a bunch of commands today, which if you're anything like me, you don't want to have to remember them all or try to write everything down. So there's the printed out Creative Commons licensed quick reference, which I fought for and got, so I'm very happy about that. That's going to include all the commands that I'm going to demonstrate and a few others as well. If you don't already have one, I have copies up front. You can grab it at the end. Before describing what Drush is, I'm going to take a step back and discuss how Drupal itself is typically managed, which is almost exclusively through an administrative web interface. No software is needed. Anyone can just use a browser to administrate a site. However, an FTP client or something similar is needed to add modules. Also, only using web interface comes with some high overhead. A multiple-step process requires many partial or complete page loads. Each of them is going to be bootstrapping and transferring HTML markup. Also, having this menu-driven process buries options and commands into like this kind of virtual maze, and you don't know where the heck things are. And that happens a lot in open source software. For example, to clear the cache, you have to log into the site, click on configuration, click on performance, and then finally you can click that one button that says clear all caches. From start to finish, it takes a lot of work and isn't what I would consider efficient. Finally, web interfaces restrict access to potentially damaging activities. I hesitate to call this a limitation, as there's hundreds of fantastically good reasons for not letting people who have just enough knowledge to get themselves in trouble to get under the hood and start messing around. With that said, sometimes it's good to be able to get in there low level and have complete control over the entire site, especially if you're, say, locked out. With this context, I can describe what Drush is, starting with the name. Drush stands for Drupal shell. A shell is a software that provides an interface to a particular component. It's typically an operating system. Shells can be command line and graphical. Drush is a command line shell. In particular, Drush can be used as a scripting interface, allowing groups of actions to be performed with a single command. Drush has 2 official pages, drush.org, which is the website that gives some high-level documentation and links to resources, and a project page on drupal.org. So why the heck should you get away from the web interface and start using command line access? Well, most simply, Drush is going to save you time. And there's a lot of Drush presentations that just say, use Drush. Why? It's fast. But they don't actually get into like demonstrating the how and why. And this is going to be very practical. I'm going to be opening up a command line and walking you through step by step how to do various things. And then at the end, if we got time, if you want to say, how do I do X? And we can play around with it like that. So yeah, the scriptable capabilities, so you can do things like download and install modules in a completely automated way. Instead of doing it one by one, you can set up a script that will do everything in one foul swoop. And then place that in version control, which is great for being able to track changes over time. But by providing tools that interact with Drupal from the ground up, the overhead of having to deal with the browser transactions is eliminated, and you can use precise actions with less chance of missing a checkbox or an option. Again, with the scripting, I mean, you just don't make me think. Just write it out once, and then you can use that every time. Drush is a fantastic tool that I use on a daily basis, but it does have some drawbacks, and especially in terms of approachability. The documentation for Drush, which is thorough and improving, is definitely intimidating and obtuse for people who don't live and breathe and code Drupal from the ground up. Drush.org is an excellent example of that. It's a very useful source of information, but if you look at it, it's literally just dozens of commands and their arguments shown on a page. So where should we bother starting? It's just a mess. I'm going to walk through some practical demonstrations, starting with installing Drush 5.8, which is the current version. If you look at the Drupal.org project page, you'll see the version displayed as 7.x 5. That's out of date. 7.x 5.8, this is the way that Drupal.org versions files. Drush 5.8 is compatible with Drupal 6 and 7. So just ignore basically the 7.x stuff. Once Drush is installed, I'm going to build a fully functional Drupal site from the ground up. This includes module installation and administration, user and cache management for troubleshooting and maintenance, to archiving and restoring the entire site. Before you start installation, you're going to the first step is going to make sure that you get some of the prerequisites. Drush requires GNU wget, which is a free and open source program for downloading files, and unzip, which extracts archives. Without them installed, Drush itself will run, but will have all sorts of failures that it doesn't really report why it's not working. It'll just kind of barf, which is not very usable. So with that said, most hosting environments and operating systems already have these commands installed. So the preferred method for installing and maintaining Drush, let me try that again. The preferred method for installing and maintaining the Drush utility is to use Pear, which is a PHP code distribution and package management system. It's preferred because it's OS agnostic, so it'll work on Linux, Mac, Windows, what have you, and it makes it very easy to stay up to date and manage dependencies. Pear is not required to use Drush. You can manually install it if you want, but then you have to manually update it, and that's a pain in the butt. So that's enough talk. Switch over to the terminal. Okay, the very first step, before installing Drush is just ensure that Pear is updated. So I'm going to do sudo pear upgrade force pear. I'm recording this, so you can go back and watch it later. So there's going to be a lot of commands. Don't worry about writing them all down. Let me make sure that I'm on the correct system, huh? And then we play the waiting game. There we go. Drush has some pair-specific dependencies that need to be installed. So we're going to do sudo pair upgrade force console git opt and then console table. Yep. Good catch. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Finally, make sure that everything else is up to date. So sudo pair upgrade all. We're completely set. Now that the groundwork is set, Drush can be installed. First, specify the location of the Drush installation files. There's an official pair channel, which is just pair.drush.org. So sudo pair channel discover pair.drush.org. And all this documentation is also available on the official homepage on Drupal.org. So now that we got the channel, we can install Drush itself. So sudo pair install Drush. And I'm honestly not sure what servers that they run on it, but it always takes like a few seconds to install, which is not that fun, but one of the joys of being able to record this in a course is you can just edit this time out, and it's like, just type it, and suddenly it's installed. The magical lies of teaching. Other lies that my teacher told me. You're going to need cursive writing for the rest of your life. No. And this is funny because like there's great wireless here. Like I was getting like several megs down a second, and then something like this just hangs. How many of you have ever tried using Drush before? How many of you is this the first time that you've ever seen it? So about 2/3 of you actually have used Drush before. Have your experiences with Drush been like kind of bad and scary, or has it just been you just wanted to like find out more about it? Clear? All right, we're going to verify that Drush is installed using which locates a command. So which Drush. Yay, it's installed. Then let's execute Drush. Very first thing that it's going to do, if you don't give it any arguments, is show you every single command that's available, which actually is kind of useful, but especially for someone who's seeing it for the first time, this is unapproachable. So now that pair's been installed via pair, now that Drush has been installed via pair, it can be upgraded with both the pair upgrade all command demonstrated earlier and a command specific to upgrading Drush. So you can just type sudo pair upgrade Drush. Right now, I've got the latest version, so it just fails naturally. Drush will inform you when an upgrade is available during normal usage. With a simple notice on the command line, it'll just say an upgrade is available. And it's not going to break anything, and it won't stop anything from working. This may seem like a lot of steps, but I'm showing you like this complete installation. Often, like all the prerequisites are there. Pair is already up to date, especially if you're using a hosted environment. So now that Drush is ready, I can start building a site. I'm going to start by downloading Drupal core, gathering information about site status, and then performing a site installation. Throughout the process, I'll describe how each command works and how it relates to everyday operations. So back to the demo. I'm going to change directory to my website root, which is actually just this auto-mounted folder. And let's make sure that everything's empty. Good. So we type drush help. This will access the help system, and you'll get a big list of all the commands, similar to just typing drush. To get help on any command, type drush help, and then the name of the command. The first command that I'm going to show you is PM download, which stands for Project Manager Download. So I'm going to get the help for that. So drush help PM download. So Project Manager is a group of commands within Drush that allows you to download, manipulate, and analyze the Drupal extensions, both modules and themes. And while I can type the entire command, there is a shorthanded alias, which you look down to the bottom. It says aliases DL, so I can just type drush help DL, and it's functionally equivalent. It's just less to remember. The only argument that Project Manager takes is a comma-separated list of projects to download, which in this case, I'm going to start with just Drupal itself. So just drush DL Drupal. So this is going to download the current version of Drupal core, which is 7.19. Give you a little bit of a output about like what's in the current release, every single modules, if there's any themes or installation profiles that are available. I can also manually specify a particular release by version. So I can say drush DL Drupal -6.x if I want to get the latest version of Drupal 6, or I can specify a particular version like 7.15 if I want to go back a version. So a list of the available versions for a particular package? No, there is not. Not through this interface. That'd be easier just to go to the project homepage at that point. I'm going to do a directory listing, see what's been put there, and by default, it'll just put it into a new folder. If there's no Drupal site available, it'll just call it by the version. So I'm going to change directory to the Drupal installation and list the directory contents. Notice there's no zip file. Drush keeps all of the temporary files completely out of the way, so you don't instead of like the manual process of when you had to FTP things up, extract it, remove it, it just does everything in one foul swoop. So let's get a little bit of introspection into Drupal. The command core status, which is just drush status as the alias, will give you a lot of information about the current Drupal installation, if there's any. If I do it right now, it's going to tell me like some very, very basic information: what version it is, what the themes are, which PHP configuration using at the time, and also some information about about Drush. Now, at this point, Drupal is not installed. It's just the code base is there, but none of the database hasn't been set up at all. So to do that, I'm going to use site install, which is aliased as drush help si. This one has a heck of a lot of options and arguments, but instead of having to walk through the Drupal site installation wizard, which is takes multiple steps and can take a few minutes, you can just do it all at once. So we'll do drush si for site install. Then I'm going to specify the MySQL configuration, because at this point there's settings.php doesn't have any type of configuration in it, because this is a complete bare bones installation. If you already have if you don't have a database and you've already configured settings.php, you can just do drush si, and it will work. It'll automatically know that the configuration is available. So I'm going to specify that db-url equals MySQL. That's not how you spell MySQL. MySQL, and then I'll hit the wrong button. This is absolutely the best way to do it, is by pressing the wrong buttons. Root at 127.0.0.1, the local machine, port 3306, drush. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to pass it one more option, which is the password for the admin user, because if you just did it right now, it would automatically generate an administrative password, which is useful to a point. It's a random hash of characters. So instead, it's nice to know what the password is. I wouldn't ever set the account pass equals admin in a production setting, but hey, if you want to live life on the edge, go for it. It's going to ask you a kind of scary question. You're about to create the directory and also create the settings PHP and drop all the files in the Drush database. Are you sure you wish to do this? Yes. So a few seconds later, this is a newer machine with a solid-state drive. A few seconds later, computer. There we go.
Is there like a default configuration so that you don't have to set up all the flags or anything like that?
Yeah, it just uses the Drupal default configuration, and then it will automatically append the database configuration to it, so I don't have to manually go through and specify the database settings array. So let's switch to the browser and see what happened. That's because I named the database Drush. Sorry. Yep. So yeah, I just called it Drush. You can call it whatever. I have a bunch of different databases on the running locally, so this just happens to be the one that I use for this demonstration.
And Drush doesn't itself have any impact on the database. It's not storing meta information or any.
That's correct. It will create a directory in your home folder called Drush, which that puts basically cache, and you can also put various settings and configurations in there as well. All right. There we go. All right, so we'll go sandbox.dev part 8080. So we got the wrong directory. Success! It's always good when a plan comes to action. We'll log in, and everything works. Complete site installation. Just took a couple seconds. Switching back, let's get the status now. This is a lot more verbose now that there's a connection. So it'll tell you, which database is, it's using, username, whether or not it was able to connect, which user that Drush is using, which by default is anonymous, and then some, information from the database, such as the default theme and the administration theme. Also has a bit more introspection into the actual site configuration as well. Okay, well, let's find where I'm at now. Well, now that we have Drupal installed, I'm going to start managing the modules, including listing, searching, enabling, and disabling modules. So I'm going to start with Project Manager List, Drush help pm-list, which shows a list of the available extensions, which it's basically modules and themes. So to be clear, this is what's available in the Drupal installation, not what's available on Drupal.org. So I'm going to start by listing every single available extension. So Drush PML. We'll think for a second, and gives you this complete readout, which is a fantastic amount of information. The package name, the type, the status, and the current version of it. Right now everything's at 7.19 because it's all showing everything from core. I haven't downloaded any modules. It'll also take some options, so I can filter this list, which is very, very useful. Drush PML --status equals, and then this is a little bit goofy. There's no, you can't just say uninstalled. You actually have to use the string not installed. And then I'll show you everything that hasn't been installed. This list can also be changed with a comma, so I can say not installed or disabled. And then also notice that it, compared to just that first list where everything was not installed, since there's two different kinds of statuses, it'll add a column for the status. Another useful argument for this is type, which filters by the extension type. There are two options, which are module and theme. So I can say drush PML --type equals theme. So the 4 core themes are now shown. The next argument that I'll demonstrate is filtering by package. Before I do that, I'm going to download the devel project, so there'll be some variety. Drush, DL, devel. So the devel project also provides some Drush commands if it's been enabled. In fact, many Drupal projects actually provide Drush support. Things like Coder, for example. Now that devel has been downloaded, let's list all the extensions again. Drush, PML. And then we see the additional development modules. Second command is project release, project manage release notes, aliased as RLN. Drush RLN. We'll show you the release notes for the package. So let's do Drush RLN devel. And it'll give you all the documentation that's available. So you could use the arrow keys to scroll and use space to go down a page and then press Q to quit out of that. What if I wanted to search for a particular package that I don't know exactly what that package is? Drush doesn't support this functionality explicitly, but I'll show you a trick that is available on Unix-like systems, like Linux. By piping the output of project manager list to grep, I can search using a keyword. So Drush PML for project manager list, then the pipe character, and then I'm going to pipe it to grep, which searches -I for case insensitive, and I'm going to look for anything that has comment in it. And it will match and highlight the particular package and I can see that there's one module named comment. So by combining this, I can quickly filter the list of commands, as opposed to remembering all the syntax of how to search PML. So it looks like the comment module is enabled, but I don't want anybody commenting on my development site because this is my perfect baby. How dare you criticize it? So I'm going to disable it using the project manager disable command, which is shortened to just dis. Drush dis, and it takes just one argument, which is the name of the project that you wish to disable. Are you really sure you want to do this? Yes, I am. If I want to, on the other hand, every time that it asks me that question, what if I just want to say yes? You can say drush dis -y, and -y is actually available throughout Drush. It says, no matter what the question is, say yes. You can get that into muscle memory and just kind of do it automatically. Drush will allow you to do a lot of really low-level things that are fantastic, but can also seriously break your site if you're half asleep. So try not to get too much in the habit of using -y unless you're, say, creating a script that is going to do a bunch of separate actions that you don't want the script prompting you each time as you go along. So same as the web interface, disabling the module isn't the same as completely uninstalling it. So Drush supports this as well. So Drush -y PM, and similar to install, it's uninstall. And there's actually no alias for this particular command. Whoops. Uninstall followed by the name of the module. So the comment module has now been completely disabled and uninstalled. The inverse is also possible using the project manager enabled, which is aliased as just en. So drush en, and I'm going to enable the devel module that I downloaded. So en-y devel. So you notice this little error here. Drush, warning rather. Drush was unable to export Fire PHP. This is another kind of goofy usability thing. It's silently failing because Subversion isn't installed. So it doesn't say that though, and there's nowhere in the documentation saying that you need to install Subversion for, to be able to use this. To get around that, I'm going to install Subversion. So sudo apt get install Subversion. version. Yep. So if I disable devel, and then drush-y enable devel again, this time FirePHP will be downloaded correctly. So I got one more trick to show you. Ever curious how many modules that are installed on a site? Especially if you're having kind of a argument about whether or not 300 modules is a good idea. I'll list every extension of type module in package core that is enabled. So I'll do drush PML type equals module, package equals core, status equals enabled, -- pipe. As it stands, this will work, but I don't want to count each one of these lines. I can pipe the output into word count and just be able to get a single number right there. So right now, 28 modules in core that are enabled out of the box, with the exception of comment, which we disabled earlier. This technique is useful for the reason that I just said, because I got ahead of myself. Now that we have the foundation to be able to download and install packages, let's look at how to manage users, including creating and disabling users, then changing passwords. Let's start with getting information about a user. So drush help, and user information is the actual command. It's pretty easy to remember. Information, which prints information about the specified users, and it's aliased as UINF. So let's take an argument, which is the user that you'd like to get information about. Right now we just have one user listed on the site, which is the admin. So drush UINF admin. So that gives you a little bit of basic information, their name, email, roles, and the status. Additional information can be shown using the option full. So drush -- full. Now this is way more of information that you could possibly want to know. That isn't the actual password, that's just the hash representation that's in the database. So it'll tell you, the last time that they logged in, accessed the site, whether or not they're enabled, what time zone they're using, and a whole bunch of other information. Now, with that said, you can see that there is a password, but we can't read it, and this is because Drupal stores the passwords with a salted hash. So there's no way, even if the client calls you, begging, please just tell me what your password is. Can't do it because there's no way to do it. Instead, you can just either send them a one-time link to log in, or you can just arbitrarily set their password for them. So the command for that is drush help user password. So user - password. So, and it's aliased as upwd. So I'm going to say drush upwd admin password equals hello. The quotes around hello aren't required, but if the target password contains quotes or spaces, then you absolutely need to surround it with quotes. Hello isn't a good password, so let's set it back to admin. Because it's easy. A second technique generates the one-time login URL, which can be given to a user. This is preferable to setting a password for a user, as administrators, have no way of knowing the password and shouldn't know. You don't really want to get in that, relationship, because then they're going to ask you, it's like, what was my password again? Don't even get into that. So the user login command, drush help user login, it's aliased as ULI, will generate these logins for a given user. So if I do drush ULI admin, it'll give me this one-time login. Now, depending on the way that the site is set up, Drush doesn't necessarily know the active site URL, and out of the box, this URL isn't set, so that's why it's showing as default here.
Can you set that up to user's email address?
It does not automatically email. Actually, that's...
Does default, is that the local host?
Yeah, well,
On this case.
yeah, well, in actually the pretty close to that, it's I have it aliased as sandbox.dev. So these generated one-time logins are not emailed by Drush. You know, the administrator needs to manually use these URLs whenever they see fit. Drush user interaction goes beyond passwords. Users can be created, they can be blocked and unblocked, and even canceled outright. I'm going to start by creating a test user using the command user create, drush help user create, which is pretty straightforward. So I'm going to drush CRT, you know, CRT rather than the username. I'm going to give it a mail equals test@example.com, and then a password equals test. Creates the user, and if I do, and you also notice that it gives you the user information, which is the same as if I just did drush uinf test. Now, I think it's a horrible idea for the test user to have a test, password, so I'm going to block them. In fact, I'm going to block everybody who has a bad password on the site. To do that, I'm going to use user block, which is drush help user block, which blocks specified users. And you can give it a comma-separated list of everybody that you want to get rid of. So drush ublk for the alias. And I'm going to just say 1 and test. Notice that I'm mixing the user ID and the username. Drush is clever enough to be able to differentiate between them.
Where do you see the alias?
Oh, down at the bottom.
Okay. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Yep. So let's verify that the admin user is blocked from the command line. Drush uinf 1. So admin has been blocked. So I'm sorry? And if I go back to the Drupal site, it logs me out because I'm blocked. So given that it's really easy to block somebody without a prompt, the block can also be easily removed. User unblock operates in a very similar manner and has a similar alias. So drush, it's user unblock, be okay. I'm going to leave the test user unblocked. So something to be aware of when you're unblocking a user, it will send them an email saying, hey, by the way, you've been unblocked. So be aware of that, especially if you're unblocking a batch of users. Now, if I want to gracefully get rid of an account, I can cancel a user using the user cancel command, which is ironically aliased as you can. By default, all content owned by this user reverts to UID1, the super user for the site. I'm going to cancel the test account now as I'm done with it, and man, anybody who sets their password as their username is just stupid. So let's get rid of them. Drush, you can test. I also have an option to delete all their content because maybe this has been on like a really malicious user or spam user, so I can just pipe delete content to it as well. Are you sure? And it's going to be done. Following a prompt to the user and all their contents have been deleted. So far we've got a handle on some of the more common user management techniques, so let's get our hands a bit dirtier with some low-level site management techniques. Yes?
What if you wanted to get rid, you want their content to be displayed, but you want to maybe keep it in case you have to escalate an issue or something like that, with like an ISP or like maybe, I don't know, law enforcement?
At that point, their Drush doesn't give you that kind of utility. I would just go into the database at that point and start, extracting stuff, or make a quick view script and just, filter for that particular user or that particular user's content, and to extract that. Didn't know I could. So, out of the box, Drupal provides a number of caching and mechanisms that improve site performance and avoid repetitive and heavy tasks. For example, both menus and blocks are heavily cached, and Drush gives precedence to these caches, over configurations that have been stored in code. This can be a bit of a pain, especially when developing modules, as code changes aren't necessarily immediately shown on the site. Additionally, when you're transferring a site between environments, in the cache settings for things like file locations and paths can cause problems. And if you ever hear of a white page of death, the site will crash because it's looking for things in the old location that made sense on the original host, but not where it is now. So the obvious solution is just to clear the cache. However, if the site is crashed, how are you going to be able to navigate through the menu and log in, go through all those steps and do that? Well, you can't. Fortunately, Drush will allow you to do that. Let's see. Drush also allows selective cache clearing as well, as opposed to just having that one button where you can clear everything all at once. So the command is drush cache clear. If I can drush cc. I'm going to press enter without any arguments. It'll give me a nice little menu, how ironic, of what cache that I want to clear. So all is very self-explanatory. Drush is actually Drush's internal cache. I'll be honest, I think I can count on one finger the number of times that I've had to clear the Drush cache. So you can easily ignore that. Just about everything else is self-explanatory. If you have a very active site, that's getting a lot of traffic, think twice before completely clearing the cache, for the entire site, because that will, it will wipe everything out, and the first few page loads are going to get really, really slow, and in a high traffic situation, that's not desirable, and people are going to have a very bad day and get frustrated with you. So instead of selecting from that list, you can also just give the name, which any of these that are listed, drush cc. If I want to clear the cache for everything, cc all. It'll think for just a second. Success. Yeah. You can't do one, and it doesn't know what one is in that context, because one, it's situational, because you will have other modules, things like views, for example, has Drush integration, so it's going to add to that list. Drush can't necessarily anticipate what's going to be on that list, so it doesn't allow it that way. So it'll just give you, so if you just type drush cc, you'll get the list of the machine names of each of the individual caches. So I can say drush cc menu to clear the menu.
But if you just enter drush and then it would let you type the number, right?
Yes.
So what if you wanted to clear number 5 and then number 8? Would you put in CSS/JS, comma, or would it put space?
I don't remember, but there's a very quick way to find out. When in doubt, read the manual. Looks like it only does one cache at a time. So I guess if you wanted to, very selectively just do those two things, I just put it in a bash script, or drush cc block and drush cc menu. Yes?
Is there a way to stack a bunch of drush commands into a command file and then just have drush plays?
Yes, but basically just a bash script. Which that's you can treat it. I mean, it's treat it like anything else. Or if you're a Windows user, a batch file will also work. Okay. So at this point, we've got a lot of control over how a site works and how it's put together, but we haven't done anything that'll affect the entire site as a whole. seeing people walk out. What time is it? Okay. Do people want to see this demonstration, or do they want to get going to the next thing? All right. So there's three major components within a Drupal site. You have the database, which is contains all the site content. You have the code base, which is all the executable code, and the files, which are the things that are generated and uploaded. Things like user images or cache files. So generally, it's best practice before you're performing any upgrades or making any major changes to a site. So you generally want to back up the entire site. Drush provides a built-in utility for doing this. You don't have to dump the entire site. You can selectively just say, I want to dump the database. To do that, you can use Drush SQL dump, which takes no arguments, only parameters. And I'm going to cut this shorter, so we'll just say result-file equals, and then the location, which I'm going to put it back a directory, backup .sql. It completely dumps it. I can completely get rid of the database table using Drush SQL drop, which again, don't get into the muscle memory of always saying yes to every command, because if you do this one on a production site, you're going to have a very, very bad day. Am I sure? Yep. So.
Does it have command to back up the file system as well?
Yes. I'll demonstrate that in just a sec. So if we reload, we're going to get the PDO exception because we've completely trashed the database. So, well, it'd be bad if this is a one-way process, so let's bring it back. So Drush SQL Q for SQL query will bring it back, and it takes, similarly, file equals, and then the location, which is where we put it previously. If we reload the page now, everything is back to normal. So obviously, in a real production site, it wouldn't be that fast but right now there's like probably about a meg, maybe 2 megs worth of stuff in there, so it doesn't take that long. Yes.
What if you had like a multi-site and then you had a prefix? You only wanted to drop like tables with a certain prefix. Can you do that, or?
You can drop the tables for a particular multi-site, but you can't drop particular tables. If you need that kind of if you need that kind of access, just use MySQL or something like PHP MyAdmin, to get in there and do that manually.
I'm just curious if you know what people do that are have a Drupal site that's managing data that's a little more mission critical than your typical Drupal site. And you're worried about transactional integrity or just blocking people during the backup. Do they work with just the hosting provider to do some more higher end, DR type replication, or what?
Well, at this point, Drush doesn't offer any kind of authentication or user control. At that point, you would want to have multiple users and be able to restrict their access that way. If that's answering your question.
I just meant if you're doing a backup of like your Drupal site is like 10 gigabytes.
Right.
It's going to take a while, and there's better ways to do it than just SQL dump, which I'm assuming this is what it's calling.
Yes. Well, it depends on the database that's installed. If it's MySQL, then it's going to use SQL dump, but it actually has some particular options that allow you to skip particular tables, or you can also specify basically you can either blacklist tables or you can whitelist tables. So you can say, okay, I skip all the cache tables, skip all the user tables, but I want all the content. Next, I'm going to archive and restore the entire site. The command archive dump, which is alias is ARD, backs up the code, the files, and the database in a single tar file. You can also add some filters to that and say, okay, exclude some pieces of that. So drush ARD. I see people lining up outside, so I'm going to do this quickly. -- destination equals, and we'll give it a similar name, but that .tar. So when it's done, Drupal shows site status and tell where the archive is created. So if we go look at that, so that's in Sandbox. Oh. So you notice it'll have the database dump as just a straight SQL file, a manifest which is only useful if you have multiple sites that are included in the dump, and then the site root, which by default it also includes sites all files. And in the interest of time, I'm going to cut this very, very slightly short. Yeah, that's more things that you can do. So Drush is a fantastic utility that for managing Drupal site installations, and I use it both daily for administration and development. I hope I've given you enough context and examples to allow you to start using Drush to build sites. If you'd like to learn more, check out my course, Simplified Drupal Sites with Drush, in the lynda.com online training library. It goes into much more detail, shows you how to do manual installations, dealing with Windows, and gets into some really low-level stuff that's fun and useful. So thank you very much for attending.